The president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, continues his attempts to prevent the United States of America from sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. He is linking the improvement of bilateral relations between the United States and Russia to concessions from the United States side. Supposedly, if Trump does not deliver Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, relations with the Russians will improve. In reality, Putin is simply admitting that if Ukraine receives these missiles, there will be no safe place left in Russia. But at the same time, Russia has started a new military provocation in the Balkans to weaken Europe and drive a wedge between the European Union and the United States. Russia claimed that a coup is allegedly being prepared in Serbia, and the president of that country stated that all of Europe is preparing for war, so he is supposedly forced to ask for protection. Well, you know from whom. At the same time, Russia is increasing its missile attacks on Ukraine, showing that it is not at all afraid of threats from Trump or European officials. So, in this episode, let's look at why Putin got scared, really scared, of Tomahawk missiles being delivered to Ukraine and what methods he's using to try to prevent it. My name is Pechiy, it's October 6th, so let's go through everything step by step. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, click the bell, and don't forget to like the video. And of course, leave your comment below the video. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support Pechiy's channel, choose any format that is convenient for you. I appreciate any support from you. So, in an interview published on October 5th, Putin stated that the United States' supply of Tomahawk missiles would lead to the destruction of the positive trend that was emerging in relations between the United States and Russia. By tying better United States-Russia relations to restrictions, Putin continues to offer incentives unrelated to the war in Ukraine in order to obtain concessions from the United States on this issue. And now, as the Institute for the Study of War writes today, quote, Putin is trying to promote rapprochement between the United States and Russia, including by putting pressure on the Trump administration to force it to start arms control negotiations in order to ensure that Russia's demands on Ukraine are met. This is an interesting point. We will come back to it in a moment. And now, Putin is promoting various rhetorical lines to try to prevent the Trump administration from supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. For example, on October 2, Putin warned the United States with threats against selling Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, stating that American military personnel would have to be directly involved in Ukrainian Tomahawk strikes on Russia. That means America would attack Russia and Russia would have to respond. Putin also stated that the strikes would mark a new stage of escalation, but would not change the situation on the battlefield. Let me also remind you that dictator Putin made similar arguments when the United States was considering supplying Ukraine with Army Tactical Missile System missiles, then Patriot systems, High Mobility Artillery Rocket System F-16 fighter jets and Abrams tanks. Putin repeatedly warned of escalation and said they would have to respond, but nothing happened. Putin seems to be trying different approaches, from threatening to worsen bilateral relations to downplaying the usefulness of these missiles in order to influence the decision-making of the United States. And here is an interesting case that shows exactly how Putin manipulates Donald Trump on this issue. Right now, the Kremlin has intensified the nuclear weapons issue. Back in the previous month, Putin proposed to voluntarily maintain the limits on the size of the world's two largest nuclear arsenals, those of the United States and Russia, set by the agreement. The new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which loses its force in February. If the United States does the same, then Putin says we will also maintain it at the current level, meaning we will comply with the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. But at that time, this proposal didn't get any response. Putin just set it into the air, the United States didn't react at all, and the news just faded away. Now, when Putin demands that the United States not transfer Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, his lackeys, his entourage, have started publicly reminding even Donald Trump, including about the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty proposal. For example, Russia's ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, stated that Moscow is still waiting for Trump's response to the question. This is Putin's proposal. When there was silence again, these hand-picked lobbyists in Washington started pushing the idea that Trump would respond. Here, Putin is making an offer. Don't give Tomahawks to Ukraine, and Putin will agree to extend new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. And then Trump says, listen, that's a good idea. But now the Kremlin is hinting that they are not against extending new strategic arms reduction treaty, but only if you don't supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. And if you do supply Tomahawk missiles, then we might not extend new strategic arms reduction treaty. The Kremlin is trying to prevent the United States of America from supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, also in order to preserve the safe haven that Russia uses in its rear. Ukrainian forces are capable of striking a significant part of the Russian rear with long-range drones, but the payload of these drones is limited and not suitable for hitting specialized targets. Ukraine's ability to carry out missile strikes deep into the Russian rear using more powerful payloads would allow Ukraine to inflict significant damage, if not fully destroy major Russian military facilities, such as the Shahed drone manufacturing plant in Yelabuga, for example, in Tatarstan, or simply bomb the Engels 2 airbase in Saratov region to dust, from where Russia launches strategic bombers that then fire air-launched missiles at Ukraine, and so on. Russia was able to significantly increase the production of Shahed drones by expanding the plant in Yelabuga. This would let it launch bigger, more frequent strikes on Ukraine with long-range drones. And so, in Russia's nightly strike packages in September 2025, an average of 187 long-range drones are involved per night, mostly Shaheds. Whereas in similar strike packages in January of this year, only an average of 83 drones were involved, which means 104 more drones. In particular, in September 2025, Russia began to launch nightly strike packages more frequently that included more than 500 drones. And now comes the most interesting part. There are two Tomahawk missile versions, one with a 2,500 kilometer range and another with a 1,600 kilometer range. So, if we take the missile with a range of 2,500 kilometers, then at least 1,945 Russian military targets fall within that range. With a 1,600 kilometer range missile, there are 1,655 military targets in Russia. These calculations are from the Institute for the Study of War, not mine. And Ukraine can probably significantly degrade Russia's combat capability at the front as well, by targeting a vulnerable subset of these rear support areas that supply and support Russian operations at the front. It is reported that Ukraine has started mass production of the new Ukrainian FP-5 Flamingo cruise missile with a range of 3,000 kilometers and a warhead weighing 1,150 kilograms. But, as you understand, unfortunately, this missile still hasn't been fully tested yet. And Ukraine will need time to scale up production. And during this time, for example, on the night of October 4th to 5th, Russia carried out the largest combined drone and missile strike on the Lviv region. Not only there, but the Lviv region was hit the hardest. And so the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the chairman of the board of the Ukrainian state company, Naftogaz, Serhiy Koretsky, noted that the Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure are deliberate. An attempt to deprive the Ukrainian civilian population of heat ahead of winter, which is also seen as a lever of pressure on Ukraine and the West. Well, while Putin is trying to convince Trump. Russia is likely using its close ties with Serbia and the Republic of Srpska to threaten further destabilization of the Balkans and undermine European unity. Don't forget that all of this is interconnected. Former President of the Republic of Srpska, Milorad Dodik, stated on October 5 that the United Kingdom, France and Germany are planning to stage a color revolution in Serbia to destabilize and break up the country as well as to weaken Serbia and the entire Balkan region. Dodik stated that European officials are distorting the recent wave of unidentified drone incursions into European airspace in order to discredit Russia and provoke confrontation. Dodik says, yes, there were no drones, you made it all up, and even if there were, it definitely wasn't Putin. On October 5, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić said NATO's call for members to spend 5% of gross domestic product on defense shows the world is preparing for war. And he stated that Serbia would like to avoid such a confrontation. And here is the link that ties this whole story together. Dodik says a revolution is being prepared, Vučić says NATO is preparing for war, and this one link connects the whole story. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service recently stated that European officials are allegedly preparing, a color revolution in Serbia. This reflects Russia's rhetorical attempts to justify its invasion of Ukraine and aggression towards NATO members. That is, both Dodik and Vučić are following the agenda of the Foreign Intelligence Service, while Putin is trying to distract Trump from moving. And here, Putin is once again manipulating Trump. The Kremlin seeks to undermine the Dayton Accords to destabilize the Balkans. And the thing is, the Dayton Accords signed to mark the end of the Bosnian War in 1995 were initiated by the United States of America. And by the way, they were signed precisely on American soil. And Putin is trying to show that the United States agreement no longer means anything. They can just be torn up like that. And Putin is trying to manipulate Trump, saying, you shouldn't hand over Tomahawks, otherwise I can cause problems, escalate provocations. Don't sign the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, and so on and so on. So, of course, I would like to wish the American president determination, but I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.